Hello and welcome to our December 2020 knitting box, little box of knitting. And our project to finish off the year is a really gorgeous, luxurious, squishy, soft shoulder shrug, by Helen Birch. It is this yarn, I can't even tell you, well, you've already got yours, haven't you? It's on the way anyway. It's such a gorgeous, rich colour. I don't know what the name of it is. They put sort of numbers on for Rowan and then you have to go and ferret about and find the name. It might well be in the pattern. I don't have that yet, so I can't, our printed book, I don't have that yet, so I can't tell you. But I'm going to call it Damson because I think it reminds me of those lovely sort of damson plums. So 5 balls of that, Kid Classic, squishy, soft, gorgeous. To make that beautiful shrug. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to go through the pattern and I'm going to pick out techniques that you're going to need to be able to make this. You don't need me to make the whole thing with you because it's a big piece and we won't be able to get it on the camera. I'd need a proper rig, a big BBC cameraman possibly. So I'm going to pick out the techniques that, just to make sure you've got a demonstration of all the stitches that are used and things like shaping and that sort of thing, so that you can be fully confident to go and enjoy making this. Hopefully as you relax into December, goodness knows we need some calming downtime after this year, don't we? Goodness me. Right, so hope you like it. Let's get going and have a little look at what we need to start the project. Right, because the project is a larger item, it's the poncho or shoulder shrug. It's designed to be larger. It's a nice relaxed fit. You don't want it tight around you. So there's a lot of stitches, which means we need a long needle. Now, obviously, we don't have straight long needles, so we're going to be working with a cable on our needles. You're not going to be working in the round, you're going to be working backwards and forwards, so don't worry about that if you're concerned about working in the round. We just need the length of this cable to get all those stitches on. So before we go, you can see I've already had a little look in there, can't you? Before we go any further, I want to show you, if you're not familiar with these interchangeable needles, what we've got here is interchangeable needles, and what that means is we've got our needle tips in the right size, which is 6mm, and we've got a cord in the right size, which I'm not 100% sure. Again, I can't remember. 80cm. Got an 80cm cord here, and we're going to attach the two together. What is brilliant about interchangeable needles, if you're not familiar with them, is of course you could use this 80cm cord with any size needles at all, and you could use these needles with a shorter or a longer cord depending on the project you were making. So if you're making a chunky hat or something, you could change these to a much shorter cord and still use them. So a lot of versatility with interchangeable needles. They aren't, you know, they're not Airfix models. It's not going to be really, really hard to put them together. But in case you've not used them before, I'm just going to show you this in particular, this little packet in here and all the things that is used for. So I'm going to get these out of the packet now. Right, well, this is very exciting, isn't it? We've got all manner of things in front of us. These little items here, these 4 things here were in that smaller packet. This is our cable and these are our needles. Now, if I show you, you've got your point, obviously this end, and this end, I don't know if you can see, yeah, you can see, that's open and it's got a thread in it, which should give you a clue as to what's going to be happening here. There's your thread on the end of the needle, of the needle, and we're going to attach one to the other. So I'm just going to screw that on there like so, which is great, but we're going to want to tighten that up a little bit, and that's where some of these gubbins come in. So this little key, okay, a little bent piece of wire. If you look, you will see, just about see there, can't you, that there is a hole on that cable, and that key fits through that hole. And what we're going to use that for is to tighten this up, because if you don't tighten it up, you may find as you're knitting that this will start to come unscrewed like so, and your stitches fall in that gap, and it is monumentally frustrating, I can tell you from someone who's done it a million times. So that's great. So I'm going to hold this needle in my left hand and I'm going to just give that a little turn like so. Now that's tightened really quite well. If you want to, you can bring this little thing into play, which is a rubber holder so you can hold that and it will not slip as you turn this. Alternately, when you're ready to undo this, you can use it to unscrew it, except I can't. But let me try this way. No, can't do it. But it will help you. I'm not going to yank that open now, because you'll use your key and you'll use the rubber. There you go. So one doesn't slip through your hands, and you can undo just quite easily. So there's plenty of things that's useful for. But just again, I've put the cable onto the needle. I'm going to put the key through, and I'm just going to hold it tight and just tighten it up. Okay, so that's nice and tight now, and that's not going to come undone at all while I'm knitting. I'm going to do the same with the other end momentarily. But before I do that, let's say that you wanted to keep your needles, keep your piece of work with your stitches live, but that you needed to use these needle tips for something else, perhaps the other half of a project, for example. Well, if you've got two cables, this is lovely, because what you've got here are little stoppers, and all that happens is if you take your needle off, you can screw that little stopper on the end, and any stitches that are held on this cable can't come off. Okay, so you've got a full piece of kit here. I really like these interchangeable needles. I use them a lot at home for other projects. So worth considering if you hadn't before now. So those are your stoppers. That's your gripper. Got a little key, and obviously your needle tip. So I'm just going to put the last one on, so we are all hooked up and ready to go. Again, putting that little key through the hole and giving that a good turn, so that's nice and secure now, and that is not going to come undone as we knit. Now, before we move away from needles, I just want to tell you something. This is a tremendously long cable, and if I'm demonstrating, I've demonstrated on tremendously long cables before, and it has annoyed everybody no end because of this. It's an awful lot of that business that goes on. So just for the purposes of technique, I'm still going to use a cable or a circular needle, but I'm going to use a much shorter one. It's different, just a different cable, and it's fixed. It's not an interchangeable. You will need this for the sheer number of stitches you've got, but because I'm just going to be demonstrating on a smaller number of stitches, I'm just going to use a smaller one. You don't need one like this. It's just for demo purposes. Okay, so let's get started. Right, we're almost ready to cast on, but before we do, I wanted to have a quick chat with you about tension. Please do a tension gauge or a tension swatch for this project. It shouldn't take you too long. The tension for the project is 14 stitches and 22 rows over a 4-inch or 10 centimetre square. So I'd suggest get your 6mm needles and maybe cast on 20 stitches and 25 rows. And once you've done that, you'll be able to get your ruler out and make sure within a 4-inch square that the tension is sort of matching what Helen has got. Now, we've actually put 5 balls of yarn in. It's a generous amount of yarn, and if you follow that tension, you should have enough left over to make some little mitts. If you don't, you may end up needing more, but we have supplied more than sufficient yarn to accommodate that tension. So please do swatch before you start. Right, so we are going to get started, and what I'm going to tell you is I'm not going to be knitting with this. I'm going to be knitting with another Rowan yarn. I'm going to just use a sort of, what is it? It's a worsted weight pure wool, purely and simply because when I'm under the lights, this will really shed and get all over the background, and it bothers me greatly. And also I want the sort of the less furry yarn just so I can show you stitch definition, and it just is easier for me to show you techniques with a smoother yarn. So that is why I'm just going to be using a Rowan worsted just for these videos. Right, so when you're ready to cast on, we've got to use, from the picture, we're not actually told what cast on method to use, but from the pictures it looks to me like a lovely long tail cast on, which is the first cast on I was taught. It gives a really nice edge. It's you know, a little bit stretchy, which is great if you're doing something that's going over your head. It's not really a problem for this one because it's sort of it's an outside, well, not an outside, it's like a relaxed fit, so it's not going to be a problem if it's a tighter cast on. So this is a really good kind of a good fit for this project, for a cast on. So you're going to need to cast on 125 stitches. And another thing that I have done more times than I'd care to count with a long tail cast on is not left a long enough tail. So I've got maybe 100 stitches or 115 and just run out of yarn, and that is so frustrating. It is so frustrating because you've just got to undo them and do it all over again. There's literally no way around it. So let me show you the tip I have for making sure you've got enough yarn to cast on with. Right, so to start with, I just get like this, I don't know what that is, 6, 7, 8 inches, maybe 6 inches, 8 inches of tail, and I think about that as that's what I'm going to use at the end to sew in. So I ignore that, and about where my fingers are, or my finger and thumb is now, that's where I'm going to start counting how much yarn I need to use. And what I do is I get my needle, so you'll get your 6mm needle, and I start wrapping the yarn around it. Now, you're going to cast on 125 stitches, so you can wrap 125 times if you want. So I'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But what I would do with a sort of a larger amount of stitches like that, I'd perhaps half it, and I'd wrap and wrap and wrap until I get to, say, 50 stitches. I'm going to do, I don't know, 25 here because I'm not going to cast on quite as many stitches as you, because I'm just going to work a smaller piece. How many have I got here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if I want to cast on 50 stitches, I've wrapped 25 times and I've marked that with my finger. So I've wrapped half the amount of stitches. You can do a third, a quarter, whatever you want. But if I've wrapped a half, I need to double the length of this yarn. Okay, and I've already left a nice amount as a fail safe. Okay, so I know that there's plenty there. So when my finger and thumb are pinching there, that's where I'm going to start my cast on. So I'm going to make my slip knot there. So if you had done a third of the amount of stitches, maybe 41, all you got to do is make that length of yarn 3 times the length, or a quarter 4 times the length. So that's an easy way to make sure that you've got enough yarn for a long tail cast on without causing any grief and running out before you get to the end. Right, so I have made a slip knot and popped that onto the, oops, sorry, just got to get myself sorted, pop that onto the needle, and I'm now going to do a long tail cast on. Now, you can do it in a slingshot way if you like. I like this method, it works the same. So just go under your thumb and over the top, under and over, or you can just do it in the more traditional way, which is how I was taught, which is basically to loop it around your thumb, go under your thumb and knit it. Okay, loop it, go under and knit it. Let's do that one more time. Loop it around the top of the thumb, put the needle under and knit it. And that is a really simple long tail cast on. Don't pull it too tight. Keep your tension the same as you go along. And what you're doing is you're using the tail, you're using the tail to make the stitch, to do your sort of knit into, and you're using the working yarn, so that's the yarn attached to the ball, to knit it. So tail goes around the thumb, goes through and knit it. Okay, and that is a really simple long tail cast on.